Hello everyone, just wanted to start the show off today with a little bit of a special announcement. As we know, we continue mostly to do the podcast Newsflash, although we are, of course, looking into very soon, possibly, potentially doing another season, restarting Hidden History, one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done here at SWRN. But we will also have a really cool podcast, more on this later, in the works for the fall. So if you want to support the work that we're doing, click the link in the description, at the very bottom of the description, to become a supporter. Just for a little less than $5 a month, you can contribute and you can really have a hand in shaping the direction of SWRN, including other episodes, more fun episodes, more in-depth episodes of Newsflash on kind of more relaxing topics than just the general news of the day, and things that are just a little bit more fun to talk about, to kind of build a community and have more fun and get more out of this podcast in general. All right, let's get started. And a warm welcome to all. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to News Flash. Trying to get back on the normal schedule, and we start with a big, splashy Time magazine piece about the reintroduction of Kamala Harris and the really some interesting tidbits I'm going to pull for you and break down from that about how she was able to prove the haters wrong and stitch together the Democratic Party. Also, I'm going to react to some new information we are getting about how Democrats are trying to quiet down the convention for themselves, woo some of these uncommitted delegates, and make a better pathway on Gaza specifically. We'll take a look at how that is, and also just a general poll look from New York Times. Siena, always the gold standard. Also, Ilhan Omar is facing her primary tomorrow after two bruising squad losses from Jamal Bowman in New York and Cori Bush. Really sad about that one in St. Louis. She will face in Minneapolis. She will face Don Samuels for her primary. We'll take a look at the really interesting political network assembling to try and take her out. Also, a new testimonial we have for you at Drop Site News as a freelance journalist and a possible anti-Semitism story, and a big mistake on that was ignored by the New York Times. Also, Russia just got invaded by Ukraine. We'll take you through that surprising operation as well on today's show. So a lot of stuff to do. I had to include that Ukraine story because I think it just added some more flavor, and it was just like, we have not talked about Ukraine enough, and I'm going to probably hit a lot of the same points, but it is a significant development that the Ukrainians are actually putting up a lot more of a fight than they previously had, and, they're really doing quite surprisingly well, incurring or making an incursion, I guess maybe the more appropriate term, making a pretty big incursion into Russia. So, or at least a relatively big, they're not halfway to Moscow or anything, but it's significant. It's significant. We'll give you the full details on how that came together last in the show. But talking about coming together, Kamala Harris, boy, oh boy, has she done an incredible job kind of nailing her party together in the wake of what was a, pretty tumultuous and pretty much doomed campaign by Joe Biden. And there's a big splashy Time species on the cover of Time magazine talking about how she was able to stitch this party together. And really, people were quite surprised by it. Like the momentum, and I think I've been surprised by, a lot of people on the right have been surprised by her ability to stitch the party together and really get so much enthusiasm. And I think part of it, not really too much of it has to do with her, because honestly, she has pretty much the most effective thing that she's done is not screw it up. Getting this really good position kind of handed to her by Joe Biden by, dropping out after he really screwed the pooch. It was so clear that Americans were ready for Democratic policies, ready to vote for a Democratic ticket, because they really did feel, I think, that the Republicans were, just a critical mass of American voters felt that Republicans were just far too crazy, far too extreme, especially on social issues, to vote for them in a serious way, especially for president, especially if you're putting up a candidate like Donald Trump. But with Biden stepping aside, I think it really opened up a whole new set of possibilities. She made a very good VP pick in Tim Walz. Got to give her that right there. And she's also, she's got harnessed the excitement. She's had a great social media campaign, and she has done a very, very good job just essentially not screwing up, not saying anything stupid, really, or too stupid, and carrying a lot of the base momentum, especially with younger voters, because that's where a lot of her younger and black voters who had been in Biden in record numbers, that is where they are surging back to this campaign. And it does make sense considering what we have seen. It is very interesting. How, though, I think because I think it's pretty obvious, her time, at least, I don't know too much about her time in the AG's office in California, but her time as senator, her time running for president, and her time as vice president, especially early on, has, I would say, been pretty marred by some tales of bad management, and just her not being able to have, a political North Star, I think they call it in this article. I think this is kind of the bet that I made when she was kind of just starting in her campaign, was that things are going to be different now. She's a little bit more competent people. She has a firmer hand kind of running things behind the scenes, which every major candidate needs. And it, if that is the case, and it looks like it has really, really helped her here. Quietly and slowly, really, her small team of top aides has been laying the groundwork for a future presidential run. After the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, the vice president added reproductive rights to her portfolio. Abortion was never a comfortable issue for Biden, a devout Catholic, but it was a natural fit for his number two. Harris believed that with Roe gone, Republicans would turn their sights to restricting both birth control and IVF, which she was right about there. In the months after Dobbs, she traveled to the U.S. talking about abortion rights as a matter of reproductive freedom. As far as the 2022 midterms aides say, again, this could be a little bit of a hindsight for your girl if you're a Kamala Harris aide, because this is exactly right. She was apparently advocating for making this core around the reproductive freedom. This would be the core message of the party in 2022, even as the White House focused on jobs and the economy. And, this, again, highlights what a bad situation it was for Democrats when abortion is such a big issue, to have a guy who personally, in Joe Biden, doesn't really support abortion. And why Kamala, who is much more close to the issue, and what is really close to, whether it be paid family leave, whether it be kind of carrying issues, whether it be, again, traditionally women's issues. I'm not saying that they are women's issues or should be referred to that, but, what has been traditionally understood as that. She is very, according to some of the reports, according to some of the tea leaves, and that in big business, she is very interested in kind of cozying up to Silicon Valley. But it's really interesting. This is a pretty smart move here. She apparently her team assembled a spreadsheet of allies, power brokers, and potential delegates to tap if and when the time came. Every photo line, every VIP invitation, every clutch with labor leaders, every meeting with key constituencies was filed away. The goal, advisors say, was to ensure there would be allies on every delegate slate in every state in the nation. We had a list, one top aide said, and we checked it twice. So, they're flexing and they're crowing, but that is just smart politics. That's basic politics. And they knew, I think this list was intended for 2028, which is the next line in the article. It's a little bit BS. Like, they knew what they were doing. And they knew they may had to use it a little bit sooner than 2028. But when Biden dropped out on July 21st and quickly endorsed Harris, it was instantly pressed into service. The vice president, clad in a Howard University sweatshirt, munching pizza with anchovies, spent the next 10 hours on the phone, dialing delegates and wrangling endorsements. A day later, the nomination was all but hers, even though other presidential hopefuls had ties to swing states or big donors. The list was the thing that we had that they didn't, says a top aide. And it wasn't a fairy godmother waving a magic wand, which, again, just genuinely smart politics there by the Kamala Harris team. And it's not something that, they've been known for in the past. But having that list of people to call and seizing all the momentum right when it very well could have been a relatively open process, was a very effective thing, and I think is the single explanation for why she was able to come in, take the momentum, and give it to a snatch it all up before anyone else really had a chance to get in and take it from her, or kind of divide the media's attention, divide the base's attention. She was able to really snatch it up, and I think probably coordinating with Biden a little bit and Team Biden as well. But her being so quick definitely did shut down other people trying to get in, to the point where on the New Yorker radio hour, Pelosi over the weekend gave her some credit.
And there are many others, too, who might have gotten into the fray had Kamala not wrapped it up so fast, because we thought, we were hoping that there would be a more open opportunity. And there was, but people didn't step in. She was very adroit.
So I can't tell if she's a little bit pissed or a little bit proud there, probably a little bit of both, because she just did genuinely believe in that process, and it does seem like they kind of came together, Biden and Harris, to kind of really prepare the landing relatively well. With Biden no longer atop the ticket, the moribund Democratic grassroots came to life. And it really was just the vibes there and the quick transition that I think enabled it really easily. But that quick transition, I think it's important to highlight, was made possible by Kamala really showing something that she has not shown in the past, which was, as Pelosi says there, incredibly adroit political instincts, or however you say that freaking French word, to close this down, to call the right people, to twist the right arms, to exchange this for that, to essentially do politics in an effective way, so that she would have enough control over the party, enough support of the party, even at the kind of relatively low levels. These delegates, they're not all very prominent people, and she was calling them. She knew exactly who to call, exactly when, and that is some competence that she maybe hasn't shown recently in her political career. And she will need to be successful in the presidency if she is to win, and this relatively short campaign that we still have left. Because my prediction is it won't be this smooth all the way until November. But with political instincts like she's showing so far in her young presidential campaign, it could be a lot smoother sailing to the White House than Republicans would want. This one was an interesting one for me here. Jonathan Wiseman reporting on this. There's about 35 uncommitted delegates represented for the New York Times, representing the Democratic primary voters who oppose President Biden, largely over what they see as his tilt toward Israel and the brutal war launched after Hamas attacked last October. And they'll have unfettered access to make their voices heard, which is why this was really a smart strategy from the jump. And it was a great way to not hurt Biden in any significant way when he was on the top of the ticket. It's definitely a little bit different. It'll be interesting to see how Kamala plays it and how the uncommitted people play it with Kamala rather than Biden. But it was a really smart way because you're almost guaranteed to have your voice, or you're literally guaranteed to have your voices heard at the convention. So, there'll be delegates there. And by the kind of structure of the Democratic Party, 35 delegates, due to the high amount of number that I think we're actually 36 to be completely precise, delegates will be on the convention floor, talking to the media, making some kind of a scene if they want. They will have that easy ticket to the center of the Democratic Party and their policy platform, and they're essentially just big 4-year or once every 4-year celebration. And they are planning to make their voices heard, shall we say. State party leaders led by Lavora Barnes, the chairwoman of the Michigan Democratic Party, and Ken Martin, chairman of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota, have worked for months to there's probably the two states where Uncommitted did the best. They've worked for months to diffuse tensions and head off a high-profile clash. These diplomatic efforts, along with the elevation of Vice President Kamala Harris to replace Biden as a Democratic nominee, have yielded progress, people on both sides said. Because, again, I think it's important for these people not to be fooled by empty words. I think they're smart people. Waleed Shahid, I know, is one. I forget the gentleman's name, but I'm sure we'll get to it later down the article. They have proven themselves to be pretty smart people. I just hope they don't fall for, again, empty words and they actually get something, pretty serious. But I would not buy that. I definitely would buy that Kamala's team is more open to it than, let's say, crotchety old grouchy Joe. So these diplomatic efforts, they have gone pretty well. I've seen a change in response to the new ticket, a hope and an openness to conversation, Barnes said, and I think that comes from both sides. She's the head of the Michigan Democratic Party. I know these folks are anxious to be a part of the process. They're anxious to defeat Donald Trump. They recognize Donald Trump is not part of the answer here. And, that makes it interesting. Kamala saying, if you want, to these very same people, if you want in Detroit, if you want Trump to win, keep talking. Otherwise, I'm speaking. So that essentially shows that she is trying to smear these people a la Hillary Clinton as just people working to defeat Trump. And that was a really noxious smear that was just bore no evidence in reality. There was no single statistic that the Hillary diehards could claim that, Bernie's costing him the election. But it is just not something that is true here either. Saying, they recognize the threat, uncommitted side. They say they recognize the threat posed to their communities by former President Trump, whose administration gave the government of Israel all it had asked for, and who's used the word Palestinian as an epithet. And Jared Kushner literally, imagining what type of beautiful beach resorts could be on Gaza. It's disgusting. It's unimaginably disgusting. Again, a massacre of 100 freaking people over the weekend, and it's just the shittiness of the news cycle that we don't talk about it, but it's just like these people are unceasingly thirsty for Palestinian death and for Palestinian suffering, and you really need a strong voice, and Harris has not been that so far to come in and speak out of it. So some of the demands there have been, including a private meeting with Harris, an arms embargo on Israel, and a change to the Democratic platform, moving U.S. foreign policy away from Israel. And again, really, just follow U.S. law. It's already in place. If do not give aid to people or countries who are violating international humanitarian law. And that's the Leahy law. That is, clear that this law is being violated, yet aid is still being given. It's really simple as that. They pushed for privileges related to convention itself, such as speaking time for delegates, credentials for staff connected to the uncommitted movement, training space inside the hall, and a prominent speaking slot for Tanya Haj Hassan, a pediatric intensive care doctor who's volunteered in Gaza. That would be a demand that I would really, if I were them, really push for, because I think that would be incredibly powerful testimony that we've seen from so many different doctors we played on the show that have come back and been on the mainstream news, and it's been very, very big. So short of that, said Leila El Abed, one of the founders of the uncommitted protest movement, also incredible organizer, a Palestinian American from Michigan. She says the uncommitted delegates have promised their presence will be known in the United Center at the Chicago Arena, where the convention's primetime show will unfold. They plan news conferences, candlelight vigils, tables to tribute literature, and they hope guest testimonies about life in war-torn Gaza. We are delegates to the party. Everyone involved is a party actor, said Jeremiah Ellison, who's an uncommitted delegate from Minnesota and who is a Minneapolis city councilman and son of the state's attorney general, Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison is a great guy. We hope to come out of Chicago secure in our feelings and ready to door knock for Kamala Harris, but we can't get to that place at the expense of lives in Palestine. So again, that kind of position there I think is really effective, because it's like, Kamala, we want to support you, but this is just too serious of an issue for you to ignore. We need something serious on this. We need something that we could return to our communities with, and you're not giving it to us, and we're going to hold firm into a deal. I think that is, it's absolutely the way to go. It's a very, very effective situation there. And again, not being some of the crazy online rhetoric about, Democratic Party has blood on its hands, all this. It is very, very true. But in terms of a broader messaging campaign and a way to turn the Democratic normies into, people who are just as disgusted as me with the leadership of the Democratic Party on Gaza, to turn them, I think you need to come in that approach. Say, we need more on this, but we want to support you. Those two things working together, I think, makes, the Democratic normie voter ask the question, hey, these seem like reasonable people. Why aren't we listening to these people? They want to support us, but, look at all this stuff that they're showing me about the horrors of Gaza. I think that's much, much more effective, even if it is, more conciliatory maybe than some people online would like, but I think it is the absolute right way to go. So Minnesota will have the largest number of uncommitted delegates at the convention, 11, but the rest are scattered. For more than a year, Ahmed Ramadan, the Michigan Party Executive Director of Coalition, has been meeting with Arab American and Muslim American leaders, more than 100 meetings ranging from 2 participants to 50 to hear them out and ease their concerns. 3 weeks ago, the party hired 3 people from the Arab American community to ramp up the effort. Wow, look at that. So again, it's going to be interesting to see. I think the key thing, the bottom line on this is to watch the space to see if the Democratic Party is really willing to move along or past, we see you, we hear you, we want to ease your concerns, we want a ceasefire too. If they're moving past empty rhetoric to real commitments they're laying out at this convention. If they do or if they don't, that ball is in their court. But then if they don't, then the ball is obviously in the uncommitted movement's court to see how they respond. I would bet there's some scene made at the convention because no deal satisfactory to the movement is reached. But hopefully I'm wrong and they come out for an arms embargo in the next few weeks before the convention. So we'll see on that. But anyway, it has been a bruising campaign for the pro-Palestinian left in the primaries, with a flood of AIPAC money they're kind of struggling to contend with. And the AIPAC money in this kind of pro-Israel spending against these pro-Palestinian candidates in American politics, really closely tied to the Israeli government, but that's another segment, has now targeted Ilhan Omar, a WhatsApp group founded by wealthy pro-Israel donors coordinated to infuse last-minute cash in a Don Samuels primary race against Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. This is in The Intercept. The members of the group, which included a consultant who was at the time working for Samuel's campaign, which, again, should be illegal because you're talking about coordinating directly with the PAC, discussed raising 6-figure sums for a political action committee, strategies for campaign phone banks, and an effort to marshal Republican voters to boost Samuels in Tuesday's open primary. Hi, everybody. My name is Alexander Min. I work for the campaign. Alex Min, campaign consultant, wrote to the group on July 24th, again, with AIPAC people in it. It seems pretty much direct coordination. We all have the power to help get rid of the squad and public enemy number 1 to Jews, Israel, and America, Ilhan Omar. Samuel's campaign manager, Joe Radinovich, said on Saturday that Min no longer works for the campaign, but an August 4th episode of a YouTube show featuring Samuels included Min as a campaign staffer, so maybe just got kind of fired on the spot, shit canned, as they say. While national pro-Israel groups like the AIPAC group have not come out swinging in the Samuels-Omar race, a far-flung group of disparate activists are using their WhatsApp group called Zionists for Don Samuels against Ilhan Omar to fill the gap. Samuels lost to Omar in 2 percentage points in 2022, and a showdown focused largely on policing. This year, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has become the focus of outside spending in Democratic primaries. In recent years, AIPAC formed a pair of political action committees that have poured more than $25 million into defeating 2 black incumbent Democrats, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. Whereas pro-Israel groups in the Bush-Bowman races ran ads on issues other than Israel itself, the Samuels campaign is focused on Omar's calls for a ceasefire, her denouncing the war in Gaza as a genocide, and allegations of anti-Semitism against the incumbent for her stances on Israel. So again, this is why I kind of think that she's in a little bit of a better place than Cori Bush and Bowman, because they had much more high profile kind of non-Israel related bugaboos that they had to answer to with the Democratic base. Omar doesn't have that, and Samuels is running a very Israel focused campaign. It's like, sure, yeah, have Omar defend the pro-Palestinian cause and have Samuels justify what Israel is doing. I think that's a great position politically for Omar to be in. It's not, again, a heavily Zionist or, Jewish district like Bowman's was. So it's not going to be a, kind of political hurdle for her at all. So Omar, luckily, is kicking Samuel's ass in the fundraising. $1.6 million to $535,000, but Wesley Bell's defeat of Bush in the August 6th Democratic primary spurred a late donation boost. Min posted a screenshot in the WhatsApp chat showing almost $100,000 was raised for the campaign in the 24 hours after Bush's loss. Campaign finance laws prohibit coordination between candidates' campaigns and outside spending groups like super PACs, but Radinovich, Samuel's campaign manager, said the campaign had no involvement with any outside groups. In a statement, Min alleged anti-Semitism. What else? On the part of Omar, saying she's a purveyor of hate against Jewish people, routinely criticized by both Democratic and Republican colleagues for her anti-Semitic bigotry. So this is somebody who is on or at least was on the Samuels campaign. One participant in the WhatsApp group, Michael Sineski, a wealthy entrepreneur who on the chat justifies support for the alt-right Christian neo-Nazis, said he had worked with Make a Difference Minnesota to raise over $120,000 for Samuels since the 31st of July, according to messages he sent to the group chat. Make a Difference Minnesota, a super PAC, was used by AIPAC in 2022 to wrap $350,000 into the Samuels race. This cycle, a super PAC spent $59,708 on printing and mailing in early August, according to FEC filings, but some of the later ones have not yet been made public. So it really is kind of a remarkable stuff throughout this. And just to give you an idea of exactly kind of who we're dealing with here, this is a guy named Sineski, Michael Sineski, I think his name is. So Sineski has given donations to many Democrats in the past. He justified his support for the far right on a national level, which is really kind of a shock situation, especially as someone who I presume is a Jewish man, to be supporting neo-Nazis. The bottom line is, and it's a sad one, we need to be supportive on a presidential level of the alt-right Christian neo-Nazis at the moment, like Ukraine, to fight off the socialist Marxist anarchists who are supporting radical Islam. He said, Nazis are better than the Islamic terrorists at this moment in time for president. On the state and city level, it's different as proof with us supporting Richie and Fetterman. He said, a reference to, obviously, John Fetterman. In a statement to The Intercept, he said, well, I mostly supported Democrats, given the rise in anti-Semitism within the party has shaken my confidence. So, again, now he's supporting neo-Nazis. So that gives you a sense of what this is. This is Jacqueline Sweet with an amazingly reported piece on The Intercept that I think you should definitely go and check out, kind of going through these WhatsApp messages and kind of doing the reporting, going through the FEC filings and all that. But it really shows you what type of people, they're really just rabid Zionists that have come out and are willing to call anyone any type of name, smear anyone as anti-Semitic for doing anything, and really just or contribute to a complete corroding of the discourse in general in this country, and target just left-wing members. AIPAC supported a racist, warping of Cori Bush's face. Earlier this really a few weeks ago, this is what came out. It really shows you what the type of people Omar and the squad has to deal with, and hopefully Omar will come out the other side reelected as a Democratic nominee tomorrow night. This caught my eye on the wonderful new website, Dropsite News, with Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill. So this is by Arvin Dilawar. He writes, as a freelance journalist, I contributed to the New York Times article, earlier this year about an anti-Zionist demonstration in Teaneck, New Jersey, a township just outside of New York City. Hundreds of demonstrators had gathered to protest an event organized by Israeli realtors marking properties in the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank, Israel's settlements widely regarded as illegal under international law. So amid Israel's ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip, the Times article described the protests as contributing to escalating fear and tension in otherwise peaceful Teaneck. As a pivotal example of alleged anti-Semitic activity in the area, my co-author John Leland, a Times reporter, quoted Township Councilman member Hillary Goldberg, who claimed that her home had been broken into as part of a string of abuse in response to her vocal support for Israel and her Jewish background. So this is when I believe, I don't know if this was, I think there was one in California that was similar, just, again, real estate in the settlements in the West Bank up for sale in these communities. I don't know if it was specific at a synagogue, but I know there's one, I believe, it was outside Congregation Ketzer Torah, that was in New Jersey. So it was outside a synagogue there that was drawing a lot of attention for sure. So, but anyway, this just again about the selling of West Bank settler real estate in America. So I've been threatened. This is a town council member, Hillary Goldberg, who apparently, according to this Times article that this guy Arvin Dillamar reported on, had her home broken into as just again for being too pro-Israel, just being too cool. Saying I had a box truck with my picture on it. The words liar, liar driven around town. My house has been broken into. I've received anti-Semitic messages. I've never felt so afraid to be Jewish as now. Really awful, really scary, harrowing stuff that somebody in, just northern New Jersey would have to hide their Jewish identity. So prior to the Times one, Times coverage, Goldberg was featured in an article from The Intercept about anti-Zionist organizing at the Teaneck High School being suppressed by local politicians, including the council member. According to The Intercept, Goldberg appears to have collaborated with U.S. Representative Josh Gottheimer to have the entire Teaneck school district investigated by the U.S. Department of Education for alleged anti-Semitism and retaliation for students organizing for a ceasefire in Gaza last November. There is no mention of a break-in at Goldberg's home in the Intercept article, nor coverage of it elsewhere, either in the news or social media. Goldberg's comments at the Times were the first and thus far only mention of the incident anywhere. The way the reporting and editing process unfolded next was a window into how politically convenient claims make their way into the paper of record without corroboration and stay in despite contradictory evidence. A little flashback to the Screams Without Words piece by the Times earlier, I think it was actually last year. When I shared my concerns regarding Goldberg's apparent political motivations as laid out in the Intercept article, as well as lack of coverage of this otherwise extremely newsworthy allegation, Leland assured me that the council member had filed a police report, meaning her story checked out. But when I requested the report, he told me he hadn't actually seen it, only been assured by Goldberg that she had filed it. Wow! Great stuff. Top journalism by the New York Times there. The story went to press without further verification of the claim. So, this guy here, Dilawar was eventually able to obtain the police reports myself via an Open Public Records Act request, and they revealed that the police had determined no break-in nor any other crime had been committed. According to the first police report dated February 10th, 6 officers responded to a call at Goldberg's publicly listed address because, according to the complaint, the lights in the basement were on and were not on when left. The back door was locked when got home, unlocked. So she just forgot she left the basement lights on, essentially. The half dozen officers checked the property, but found no sign of forced entry nor anything else amiss. 2 subsequent checks of the area found nothing further, and a follow-up investigation by a sergeant 2 days later ended the same. The sergeant did respond to the residents a couple of days after the initial incident was reported and spoke with the complainant. Seth Kriegel, deputy chief of the Teaneck Police Department, reiterated to me, and based on speaking with her and his investigation, he determined there was no burglary that had occurred or attempted burglary. So this is a woman who has, again, investigated or got the whole Teaneck school department, district, in her own town, via collaboration with U.S. Representative Josh Gottheimer, arrested for anti-Semitism for a ceasefire protest. And now she's just making up her house being broken into as a result of her Jewish identity, and it's getting in New York Times. Another instance to really view, just as much as you view something on Twitter with skepticism, especially when it's a politically convenient story for the New York Times, especially when it comes to issues of the American empire, something the American military is telling them they're just printing, willy-nilly, and especially as we've seen over the last 10 months, anything related to, pro-Israel news. I think you got to look at it through a grain of salt, at least a verification from a second source, because this is another one of these very, very embarrassing moments that is adding to a track record of them, especially over the last 10 months, especially over issues regarding the Israeli, genocide in Gaza. So really, really kind of shocking stuff there. And, what can I say? Another black mark on the Times, supposed paper of record, but something that, as I said, requires a lot more careful looking into, especially when Israel is the issue being reported on. And who saw this one coming? Ukraine has pulled off a surprise incursion, the biggest in a long time, I think the biggest in the war, into Russia. And a piece in the FT about it, talking about how essentially this crew takes an American truck, an American plane, goes into Russia, and really just kind of goes in and kicks some ass. When a Financial Times met the crew on Sunday, just 5 kilometers out of Ukraine, Vladimir, Roman, and 2 other soldiers were taking damaged vehicle because, of course, it eventually got hit by a Russian rocket because they just went in broad daylight. But they sent it back to U.S. base in Germany for repairs. But they're apparently making some real ground into Russia for the first time in a long time. Which is very, very good to see. So as with the Russians, the U.S. and German governments, 2 of Ukraine's largest military and financial supporters, said they had not been informed in advance about the Ukrainian incursion. Wolfgang Buchner, a German government spokesman, on Monday said the operation had been prepared with great secrecy and without consultation from Berlin. Everything points to a spatially restricted deployment, he added. But apparently things are good. The morale is high, and Russia, according to the soldiers, has failed to halt their advance. Many of its reinforcements have been captured or killed. One Russian convoy went up in flames after being struck by a U.S.-made HIMARS missile, according to Ukrainian drone footage reviewed by Financial Times. And this is apparently a provocation in the eyes of Putin, which I guess makes sense. And Moscow has evacuated more than 130,000 residents from the Kursk and Belgorod regions bordering Ukraine. And while it is good to see, this being, because I think we are seeing a surge in aid, which I think is a good thing, but it is definitely not a good thing to surge in aid without a plan for peace, which I don't think, Biden certainly has. He's not, kind of driving the train on this. And Ukraine has taken our weapons and essentially gone for the maximalist aims, which is, any objective military analyst knows they're going to have really struggle to achieve. I think it seems more likely than not, just given what we've seen about the Ukrainian government and the U.S. government so far, that there has to be somebody, maybe Kamala, maybe Trump if he wins, God forbid, is able to come in and say, okay, we gave you these weapons, we give you these F-16s, we give you these kind of indestructible APCs, but we're going to have to put a certain line in the sand to say, okay, we're getting to this point, we're going to keep going, and also at the same time, renew diplomacy, renew conversations, and saying, Putin, you're not winning this war. We're going to fight you off. We need to stop you here. And it will come through a besting on the battlefield, but it won't be a long and protracted war that turns that place that has been a war zone for far too long already into a really long-term kind of forever Afghanistan-style war that's just a hellscape for 20, 25 years, and then just destroyed for many, many decades after. But for now, it is good to see this. It really does seem like, again, but it has to come with a plan. But for now, it is very good to see this movement of these troopers, as hopefully it means for getting more leverage at the negotiating table and securing a more just peace than would have been on the table previously. Other soldiers said the objective also included forcing Russia to divert resources from the Ukrainian front line. It is too early to tell whether they've been successful, with reports indicating only small numbers of troops have been pulled away from Kharkiv and Donetsk fronts. Those are kind of the eastern side of Ukraine, and they're really hitting right now the kind of the northern side, northeastern side, up much closer. Kursk is the kind of the Russian region that they're attacking over from Sumy in Ukraine, the kind of Sumy region of Ukraine, which is pretty significant. It's going to be interesting for them to follow. Elements of at least 6 Ukrainian brigades are involved, according to the soldiers and the FT's review of combat footage. Other soldiers said that social media videos showed that they previously fought in flashpoints in eastern Kharkiv region, where they were holding back Russian forces that launched their own cross-border incursion in May. So again, very interesting to follow. Encouraging news, but becomes very unencouraging, to say the least. There's no plan and guiding hand from the U.S. here. All right, so we got for you guys today. We're back on Wednesday. It's Newsflash.